We are being recorded. So,
don't say anything embarrassing.
Lock it up. Lock it up. All right. We are excited to talk to all of you about finances. We are writers. We have made a PowerPoint presentation. Expect the art to be below mediocre. And we have our guests joining us who will be throughout the presentation chatting through some stuff. We've all we're at different levels in our career. Most of us are like story editor and up. We EP level. We've all been staff writers at a certain point in our careers. So we're trying to touch on some stuff that we stumbled across as each of us rose through our careers, and we felt it would be helpful for you to at least hear some of these words. And then also for those of you who might be a little further along in your careers, all of us have been, navigating what is a loan out. And so we're going to devote some time to talking about incorporating once you've sort of like reached this certain threshold of income. What? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen.
Who doesn't love a threshold of income?
I know. Okay, here we go. Playing the keynote. Watch out. Okay, welcome to the night of finances. It's late night with your host.
Ching. Wait for the glasses to drop. Here they come. Check out this graphic. Boom.
Oh my God. We figured out how to animate it. All right. And we have special guests joining us, Ben, Jacob, and Dani, sharing their wisdom and also financial fears we've all had that we are terrified to share with each other. But when we talk about it, we learn that everybody has stuff we've had to overcome figuring out our own finances. So we're kind of dividing the night into two parts. Tonight's sesh was going to start off with get your money, and then we're going to end with get your money to make money. Thank you. So this is in yellow so that you pay attention to it. We're writers. We are not financial experts. We are not accountants, nor have we ever been. And we want to remind you that most of you aren't as well. And therefore, as writers, this whole point of this presentation is just to get everybody curious, figuring out how to ask questions, thinking about things you might not know about, but like truly, that is the way we have learned everything that we've known up to a point. And then you seek out the experts by talking to other writers and finding them. We are not those experts. So that's our disclaimer.
Part one, get your money.
Yes. All right.
An important part of the part one.
Part one, getting started. All right. So how do you find money as you're getting started in your career? There's some basics that we want you to know about to ensure, if you don't know about them, that you're just making all the money that you can be making at any particular point as you're getting started. The first place to start is to know you're in the union, you're putting hours towards getting in the union, you're on the cusp of being a union member. How do you figure out what the minimum and weekly rates are? Because union minimums is a great place to start, even if you're doing a non-union job, even if you're freelancing, even if you haven't, if you're getting a job and you just don't even know where to start, this is the place to start. Where are you going to find those? You are going to find them on the Animation Guild's website. Follow this link. Colleen's going to drop it in the chat for you. We have found doing panels, links can be a little bit difficult. So like pull it onto something, maybe start a Word doc. Maybe when you open these links, bookmark them into a folder for yourself. This whole presentation will be made as a PDF and accessible to everybody too. The Guild website's awesome. It has so much information on it. So, I'm just going to go back for a second. So basically, you're going to find this website and what you're going to download is a PDF that's called CBA wage minimums. And that part of the pages in that, you're going to flip through it and you're going to find these areas. So this is, I just pulled out what's important to most writers. And most of us who are working in animation are generally writing on 11s and 22s. And we're generally either getting staffed as weeklies or we're getting paid in freelance. So, or you're doing a combination of both. So you have these in the sort of teal color. I just pulled out. So your first column that says we're going to go from left to right. So in where it says short subjects, 7 to 15 minutes. And also this area is called the writer and storyboard classification. So they've kind of put us in with board artists as we're all kind of classified as these like story persons. And that's how like you get paid. However they put you through payroll, there's like a number associated to this line item of story person. So if you're writing a short subject that's less than 4 minutes, like a 2 minute or whatever, that's per your contract negotiation. So there's no minimums for that. But on the far left column, you've got your, what is this thing that I'm writing, right? So I'm just going to skip down to short subject, 7 to 15 minutes. This is like you're freelancing a typical 11-minute episode. So I cruise over to the farthest line. These are different. So let's say you've got your synopsis and outline. If it's a union job, you're not going to get paid separately. A synopsis, a premise, whatever, it's lumped in with the outline fee. So an outline, you're going to get paid a rate of, let's say, $1,133.08. I go, these are the different stages of writer level, which are the different columns. So I always just go to the furthest one, which is like the journey person. So someone who has had experience. They also have the column for storyboard only, and then they have the column for teleplay or screenplay. That's your draft. It's, I think, the prerogative of the production company that you're getting paid out through, which draft you're paid on, whether it's the locked record draft, or they're paying you on a second draft, or they pay you on your first draft delivery. Regardless, this is the amount of money that's the guild minimum for how much you should be paid for that body of work. And then the far right column on that first square, that's the number of hours that delivery is getting you in union hours. So the 67, 47, 153, 91, those are hours you're getting towards your union benefits. Down here on this other lower square, these are the weeklies. And you can see these are the different periods of time. So the guild renegotiates and the minimums will increase. So this is, we would scoot all the way down to the August to July 2021 period. This is currently what we're referencing. And even though it's September 21, after negotiations, we will get the new rates, but the most current rate is your farthest right-hand column, right? So you can see in the weekly rates, 21,022 line item, animation story person, animation writer. So let's say you're getting your first staffing job.
Yay,
how much?
Congratulations.
We're so proud of you. Now get your money. So how much should you be getting paid? You should be getting paid a weekly rate. And I'm just, again, jumping down to Journey. I think anybody who's written anything at all and gotten paid for it, you become Journey. And so you should be getting a weekly rate of, and this feels somewhat low, $2,064. The company will pay in fringes, so you're actually getting more in your benefits, and we'll talk a little bit about like holiday pay and stuff, but $2,000 a week is the minimum you should ever take for a staff job. If someone's offering you less, they are not cool, man.
Not cool, man.
Don't accept it. All right, so these are your unit rates. You should know them, you should love them, and then you should always ask for more. So here we go. We've gotten our minimums and weekly rates figured out. Now you've got an offer in. We could spend hours talking about negotiations. I'm not diving into that too deeply. I just want you to know you can always ask for more. The job offer does not go away if you say, no, I'd like X amount.
I will also say,
yes.
Just to jump in, Ben, who will be talking to us later, he and I were up for our same show, and because we knew each other, we communicated. Even though we were negotiating for different positions, we were talking openly about, hey, what they offer you, where did you land? So we were able to talk to each other to figure out what the wiggle room was in the budget. you know, and we helped each other be like, hey, they went X amount more, you can push. Don't believe them when they say like, this is as high as we can go. Like, don't be afraid to push. So it's, if you have someone either that's on a familiar type show, or even you're up for the same kind of thing, or who had worked at the same company, like, I think we should encourage each other to talk to each other so you can have that confidence to go in to push.
Yes. And also knowing that even if you don't have that close of a relationship with someone, if you know someone who's being offered or has a staffing job on that particular show that you're up for, who is maybe at the same level as you can, when you are in negotiation, ask for parity with other staff writers and or other writers at the level that you are at, and they will sometimes they will say no, but sometimes they will just match your pay so that you know you're not coming in and just arbitrarily making less than someone else because you didn't negotiate hard enough. So then the other things that you should know about, but every show is slightly different, and every time I've always had to ask lots of different people to figure out the nuts and bolts on holiday pay and sick pay options. How do we take our holidays? How do we take a day off? Vacation pay, where is that accruing? Where is it going? On a Netflix show I was on, I had asked at the very, very end, I was rolling off and I kept seeing this holiday pay accrual number in my paychecks. And I was like, I don't think I've gotten that. I asked our line producer, who asked, I think, BA, and then all of a sudden a check comes in the mail to me. I'm getting paid out for my holiday pay that I didn't take while I was working the show. Current show I'm on now, I'm actually getting paid $160 every paycheck for my holiday pay. They're assuming I'm not going to take any vacation days. So it's different, but just know that there's a sneaky, sometimes holiday pay, sick pay getting accrued for you on your jobs, and it's getting held somewhere. And depending on what the show is like and how they structure their payroll, you may be able to get that money. Always read your contract. Sometimes there are things like dismissal pay. We have talked about this a couple times on WCC nights and panels. There's a great resource for you right here in this link on the Animation Guild, just the basics of dismissal pay, what it is, what you need to know about it. And in sometimes in a negotiation or a contract, you are able to ask for more dismissal pay. I'm not going to get into the weeds with that one. Again, it's just words you should know about, links you should check out. Okay, here's a big one. Unemployment is not shameful. We are in a gig economy. You will have dry periods. You will be on a show and then you will not be on a show. And the longer you work, the longer you get comfortable with those periods. The EDD is where you want to apply for unemployment. You do not have to be fired from a job to receive unemployment. This is what their website looks like. It is not scary. It is not telling you that you're bad for asking for money because you don't have a job right now. They
Also,
know you're looking.
Sorry to interrupt you, Colleen, but if I could,
Please.
Part of your taxes being taken out of paychecks is going towards these benefits. So you've already paid into them. It's your money to be used when you need it.
Yes,
if that helps
exactly.
people frame it in a different way. It's your money.
And you can choose. So what you want to do is you want to get onto there's a link, save the link. You want to get onto their website, familiarize yourself with it, take a look at the eligibility requirements. Pretty much if you've left a job, you're on hiatus. If you're off a job has ended. If you leave a job, it's slightly different. If you are quitting something, it's harder. That doesn't always necessarily work for you to get unemployment. However, if your job ends, go to the EDD and get yourself on here and then make your claim. It is not difficult to do. You just have to get a couple of documents together and you register. And then what starts to happen is they take you through the process. And then if you start getting unemployment, you will get a percentage of what you would have been making at your last rate of pay. So you will get a percentage of that, but sometimes that's enough to really carry you through quite a while. And especially during the pandemic, we all got extra stipends and you could further there was like longer and longer times they were allowing us all to be eligible to receive unemployment.
I will say,
I went on it.
I will say the first time that I did it, I was really paranoid about how long it was taking, because when you're working, you don't think about the weeks going by. What, like when you're not working, every day feels like a week. So I will say that when you do put it into the system and then they're like, we'll let you know, it sometimes takes a while for it to start working. But then once it does, it is usually like clockwork that it comes to be like,
Yep.
fill out the times that the weeks that you're owed for the pay.
Yep. And it's a very smooth process. Once you have an account, you go in and you say, I'm looking for work. And they're like, are you sure? And you're like, sure am, box check. And then they go, do you want us to take some taxes out? And then you decide whether you want them to or not. You will have to pay them if you don't have them, take them out. But anyway, then you get a direct deposit if you set it up with your bank account. So it's a great source of financial stability and income when you're not working. So look at how far we've gotten. All right.
Look at all we've done on a Tuesday. Look at this.
Oh, here we are. Okay. Real quick, if you are unwrapped, invoice for your work, invoice early, invoice often. Never assume the company has remembered you. Never assume that they're on top of it. Do not assume that business affairs is working quickly and efficiently. Invoice for your work, follow it up, follow your checks, make sure you're getting paid for what you need to be getting paid for. Read your contract so you know your deliverables, you know your steps, you know when you should be getting paid and for what.
I would also say, just as a caveat to being unrepped, sometimes it can be a struggle to try to find a manager or an agent. If you're looking for someone to just look at your contracts, just like, I can't look at this myself, you might want to look into an entertainment lawyer, and they will take out less. I think they take out maybe 5%, and 5 and less, I believe. Yeah, Ben said 5. So if you just want eyes on it and you're like, I just don't have legal brain to figure that out, like, you can, there are entertainment lawyers abound in this city to try to look into, and also ask friends if they've used one, because it's always nice to be able to use someone that someone knows or has used.
Yes, this is why you need to make friends with other writers, and us writers all need to get comfortable talking to each other, because most of us, how do you find a lawyer? You ask another writer if they have one or they know somebody that does. Okay. The other thing that is a new thing that a bunch of us heard about that we've been trying to share with others is this is separate from domestically. If you've written music domestically, you usually register on BMI or ASCAP, and then you are paid residuals based on that. Now, this is for international, so a show that was broadcast potentially internationally. So for instance, I used to work on Equestria Girls, and I know we were in Latin America, we were in all different international places where we were selling in the show. So, and those shows had music. TAG, the Animation Guild, does not collect foreign levies for you when your show airs abroad, but the WGA will. So you can go on, here's a link to this place. Again, this is not your domestically airing show or signing up for, like, you're the lyricist and you get lyric credit. This isn't about credit. It's just if there happens to be international money because your show was broadcast internationally and you wrote a song for it, here's a way to find that money. And that's what it looks like. That's the website. I took a screenshot and I put it in the keynote.
I also I've been putting all these links in the chat for those who maybe don't have the chat open. Okay, so part 2 is getting your money to make money, or as Liz Lemon has said, I have to do that thing rich people do where they turn money into more money. Yes. Don't we all, Liz? Don't we all?
So let's become rich people. All right. So now we're further along in our careers. We are making money. And let's say you are at the level of story editor or above. Do you know what scripts on top means? If you don't, you should.
I don't. Why don't you explain it to me?
Colleen, let me tell you about it. So basically it means, as a story editor, your full-time job is story editing the show. So as writers deliver their drafts, you're making sure everything's on tone, you're touching all of the scripts, you're probably in different parts of production, and your job is not just writing. You can contract for scripts on top, because when you are writing, it is a slightly different job and takes more time away from that other responsibility set that your story editor, co-EP, EP, producer job may
They
have.
got you on a 2-for-1, so get paid for 2.
You better get paid because they are going to use all your time. And so you should get paid for it. And also, who doesn't want to get paid for writing scripts? So for most staff writers, this is your job. You are paid to write the scripts. So you do not get scripts on top, but some staff writers in different levels of their career have gotten scripts on top. But basically it means in addition to your weekly rate, you are getting paid a rate for the scripts you deliver. It will start with freelance union mins and go from there. So you have to know that you want to be getting, if you are delivering scripts and getting scripts on top, what are you making for that? Again, track those paychecks because they're not going to necessarily track it for you. All right, it's time for our first guest panelist. I'd like to welcome Dani to the Zoom.
Hello.
Hi, Dani. Hey,
Hello.
how's it going?
Hi, Colleen. You guys are crushing it. It's going good. It's going good.
Awesome.
I want to add something to the foreign levies talk, if it's okay.
Ooh, please, yes.
Yeah.
So that's not just for music. I've been getting foreign
Amazing
residuals or levies from old SpongeBob's I did for years now, and it's nice. So
That's
if your show's broadcast internationally, other countries have better protections for writers, and they collect residuals even though they don't know where to send them. They're collecting them for you if your stuff is airing overseas, regardless of whether or not you register, but they send it all to the WGA. And so then when you reach out to the WGA, and if you've been doing this for a while, they may have money for you now.
You're making me be like, I need to check this website ASAP.
It's good news for writers if they don't know about it.
Yeah.
That's great news. That's excellent. And see, back to the disclaimer, we are not experts.
We
And there
didn't
we
know.
go.
We both just learned something.
Information. Great. Okay, Dani, I want you to take us through, you're specifically going to talk to us here about the 401k, but I want you to talk a little bit about what emotionally and mentally did you go through before you set up your 401k?
Well, a lot of panic and fear, but that's my baseline.
Sure.
So I haven't made, the greatest financial decisions in my life, and with a lot of ups and downs. I think I was afraid with the 401k, for example, that like, oh no, they're taking money out of my check. Will that hurt a lot? I should probably back up and say what a 401k is. It's separate from the pension plans. The pension plans you're signed up for as an Animation Guild member right away. And your hours start to accrue towards someday getting to vest. And those are things I don't know about. But I know it's not terrible getting vested. But anyway, the 401k is separate from the pension plans. It's a retirement and savings plan. And often 401ks are company sponsored. That's the typical one that you hear about. But this one is not. This is one that's set up through our lovely, wonderful union that cares about us and wants us to have money in our retirement. It's pre-tax money, and it gets taken out of your check, so you don't ever see it. And a 401k gives members a tax break on money that they contribute. And also, if your money, while it's in there, makes money, then I believe it's also not taxed. So for me, it's one of those things where that's a no-brainer for anybody to get a 401k. But for me, I'm like, what, taking money out of my check? Oh no. I will tell you that I have set so one thing that's cool is that you can set what your contribution rate would be. So you can say take 2% out of my check or up to 40%. And so you can set it somewhere where it's not going to hurt, basically, and you can get it started. And I think one of the dumbest things I ever did financially is waiting to do it. I did it I'm 51 now. I don't want to tell you when I started, but if I had started earlier, the outcome would be I'd have more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about a 401k, and we dropped the link for everybody so you can get on that FAQ and just kind of, if you are so unfamiliar with what a 401k is. But essentially, even if you are just getting started and you don't feel like your paychecks even cover your freelancing, you're just struggling, you're just trying to get by. Sometimes 2% before taxes, you're never going to notice that. And that's actually going in, and because of how the plan is run, it gets invested for you. It gets invested safely. You can make it be very, you have like a basic dial you can turn of how safe or how risky you want your investments to be. But essentially, it's taking a small percentage out of your paycheck before your money is taxed. And then they tax it and you get your weekly paycheck. So just think about that, have that in mind. And what Dani said is really, really, it's okay if you're getting started a little bit later. You can do the 40%, but you won't do a high risk investment, that's for sure. But also knowing that you might assume like everybody around you just knows this stuff and is just doing it and like embarrassed that you don't. But hear from Dani, like we don't, and we just have to figure it out. And then we jump in the deep end and you kind of start making your moves that way. So cool.
Yeah. I also want to add the form is the 401k form that you fill with you send it to the Animation Guild via email or fax. It's super easy to fill out. I get fear and panic when, like, in addition to my baseline, I also get it when I have to fill out a form. And I found it super easy. And also when I've changed jobs, updating that is also super easy. And then as the weeks and then the months go by, you can see how much you've donated to yourself. What a great charity.
What a great cause, you know?
You know where
cause.
it's going.
Yeah.
I also took a while to set mine up, and people were like, you should do it. And I was kind of prideful of like, I'd rather just have it now. And yeah, now I get the thing that updates me and I'm like, yeah, I should have done that earlier.
And Dani, can it travel with you as you jump different jobs?
Yes. And that's easy to do too. It's also, I think it's actually the same form, but you just answer questions differently and very, very quick. I think it takes all of 5 minutes.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to share? This is super helpful.
No, but I'll be around for questions, although I am not an expert.
Thank you. Yeah. We also dropped the link for the pension plans, just describing that a little bit. A pension plan is different than a 401k, but guess what? When you're in the union, you start being a part of it and you don't have to really do anything. It just starts pulling money aside for you. My mom was in the teachers union, so I've heard of pensions before because she's got one, and it's great now that she's in her 70s. And so that's another thing you can check out and just know about. So on to
what the hell is a loan out, and should I have one? I will say I think Colleen had mentioned this before, a loan out is also the same as incorporating. And it might be something that you've heard people saying that they're thinking about incorporating. Should you have one? A separate, good, and individually based question. I personally started a loan out, and I will say that it's still new. So I'm only like about 5 months in. So I can only speak to certain aspects of it. But I think for me, at least, I found that I had a baseline of the stuff that we had talked about earlier. I knew what my rates were. I knew what my before and after taxes was. I got a sense of how often I was working, and I was able to figure out if I thought it might be the right move. It's all an individual basis, which is also why we're going to talk to a couple other people, because not everyone's the same. So we're bringing on a couple of special guests to talk a little bit more. And I will also preface this by saying loan outs can become a very deep dive of a lot of nuanced things. We're going to try to keep this to kind of broad strokes so you can get a basic understanding of, if you think it might be the right thing for you, we will have resources afterwards. So don't feel like you have to furiously write some of the slides that come up with information. We will share it. So I'm going to bring on Ben and Jacob to talk about some of these broad talking points about loan outs. Ben?
Jacob might still be stuck at work, so it might just
okay.
be Ben.
No, he's here.
Oh, he's here.
Yay!
It's
You're
a
I'm
party
actually
room.
in Jurassic Park.
Oh my God.
This is some dumb place I'm at. Doesn't worry about it. I'm not at an amusement park. I'm at work. First of all, I want to change my name to Ben, so it could be like from the two Bens.
That would be a real.
You can't have that.
It's all about
That's
the
just for
Benjamins.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna launch in some of our main talking points that are here. That's just the first one is, when did you feel like you both have incorporated? What was the point that you felt like I should be thinking about it?
Am I working? Oh, good. I'm showing up when I do things. I think Jake and I have different stories. So I did a lot of research. I've had a couple of jobs, I would say, that usually for your first job, you won't be looking at a loan out. Even if you do, as Colleen has said, and demand $2,000 a week. A lot of loan out advice is that if you're making less than $100,000 a year, you should not look at a loan out. But a lot of other resources kind of lean a little bit more towards $150,000 or something closer to that. So you probably won't be looking at it for your first job or maybe even your second job. But I did it because I got a big raise for my last job, and my lawyer was like strong arming me into like, you're going to do a loan out, aren't you? And I don't know if that's because my lawyer makes more money or if my lawyer is just looking out for me, but I started looking into a loan out because I never thought about it before. But basically what a loan out is that you create a business with a name of your own choosing, and you get paid into your business instead of getting paid as an individual. And then you use the loan out to pay yourself. And the reason that you do this is because you are able to save a certain amount of taxes because you're paying taxes as a business instead of an individual. And because of recent changes in tax law, if you have reps like managers or agents, you used to be able to write off the fees that you pay towards agents and managers. You used to be able to write off if you paid for Netflix or you use the internet or all of these things that you used to use towards doing your job. And then they changed the tax law and you are not able to do that anymore. But if you are a business, you are able to do that. And so if you make a certain amount of money, you might create a loan out so that you can use the business benefits to pay a lot less taxes and do a lot of deductions. So I did it because I was making a certain amount of money, but I believe you, Jake, if I am wrong, is because you were in a writing partnership and you were advised that it's easier to be paid if you are in a loan out when you are when you are writing partners with someone.
That's right. Me and my partner, Drew, early on, we had a loan out for some other work we were doing before we got into animation. And then when we first got a job in animation, that was the first thing that they asked. Oh, you're a writing team. Do you have a loan out? Because the studios prefer paying you as a writing partnership through a loan out. It's easier for them. And the main reason why they like doing that is a shady reason. It's so they can keep your rates low and they can split your rate. That's the main reason. Like, we didn't know that at the time. That's the main reason why they like doing that. But for us, Brad, the main thing that having a writing party, having a company has done for us, as it does have some serious tax incentives, like Ben was saying. But it is important to note that I think the most forgiving of the best one you want to be considered as an S corp. That's like a very easy box to check. That'll save you some dollars in the long run. And for us, Drew and I, our company now, it allows us. The main part about it too that we like is I feel like sometimes an S corp, or sometimes having a loan out allows you to go through business affairs a little bit faster. You can, it's just a little bit quicker with some of those processes, having get paid to a company as opposed to having get hired for a person. What else about loan outs?
Well, I was going to say, have you, either of you found, do we want to talk about the pros and cons? So pros you found.
Yes.
You've had.
I think the pro is when it comes tax season, that's a pro. It will, if you do the math right and you do what the accountants say, it will save you a decent chunk of change. The con is the financial management of it. If you're kind of already living paycheck to paycheck, you're kind of not already living within your means. all of a sudden flipping that to being a loan out where you have to be saving a large chunk of your money for taxes later. You have to be doing quarterly taxes. You have to be doing these reports. Some of that stuff is a con, and it kind of gets in the way. So it's definitely kind of leveling up in the sense of taking your own financial responsibility on. What about you, Ben? Pros and cons?
I mean, the reason that you would do a loan out is, again, because you're making a certain amount of money and you feel like you can save a bunch of taxes being a business. There is a lot of things that, like the cons, like you've mentioned, is that it's kind of complicated. And so instead of, I'm so scared about doing anything wrong, so I pay like an accountant friend to manage my loan out for me. And so I give them a little bit of money a month to do my payroll. So if you're a loan out, you need to pay yourself a living wage so that the IRS isn't like, wait a second, you say that you are only paying yourself $5 a week to live off of, and you're paying taxes on $5 a week. That's not fair. You have to pay yourself a certain amount. I don't think there's any official amount, but they say like a living wage that you could like reasonably live off of, and the rest goes into your business. And what was my point? The cons, you have to pay $800 a year for a business license. So that's a pretty big expense. So if you were not making, if you're making less than $100,000 a year, like $800 is almost $1,000. And then also you need to do payroll. So you need to pay yourself so that you're paying taxes out of your payroll. And so payroll is scary to me. I, again, pay my accountant to do payroll for me, and he uses a program. I have friends that use programs like Paychecks or other programs like QuickBooks to do the payroll to pay themselves so that like the appropriate taxes are taken out of their pay. So that's complicated too. So it depends on how much you're making. I was making a certain amount of money so that I was just like, I want somebody else to do all this stuff that's really scary to me because it's complicated. Yeah. But a con also would be that I thought I was going to make a certain amount of money this year. I thought I was going to be working until the end of December. And then it turned out, surprised, that I wasn't. So now, like personally, for me, with the loan out, I'm like, oh, I kind of wish that I hadn't done this because I thought that I was going to make a certain amount of money. And now it's a little bit complicated because you're not fully in control of your money as much as you would be if it was just all going into your personal account. You have to, payroll your money when you need money. And then if you need extra money, like if things come up, like you suddenly need to replace your couch because your cat ripped it up or something like that, you get a living wage, and then you also pay yourself dividends as like a stockholder. So if you need extra money, then you get extra money, and you ask, either you pay yourself if you're doing payroll yourself, or you ask your accountant like, hey, I need an extra $2,000. My cat ripped up my couch. And then you get that as a dividend, and a dividend is not taxed like a regular payroll thing. So I think for me personally, like the cons would be that it is, it's complicated. I'm paying somebody else to do that stuff. But, the pros would be like, if you save $15,000 and it costs you $2,000 to do the loan out, like that's pretty sweet. So in that case, it would definitely be worth it, like a little bit of trouble. And for me, if I had worked until the end of the year, then I think it would 100% be worth it because I would have paid an accountant to do the loan out, which is a process. I think Colleen will send out a list later about the process of doing it. Personally, I think Colleen and I both paid somebody else to do it for us because we were like, I don't want to do it. I paid someone, an accountant, like $200 to do it. And I got my business name. And that way that was handled. You can do the stuff yourself. You can do paychecks yourself. You can do all the filing and stuff yourself, but why would you, if you're making the amount of money that makes a loan out like appealing, like get somebody else to do it.
Jacob does it.
I do it. It saves you. I do all of it myself. I did all the stuff on legal.
Guys, Jake is weird. Don't listen to him.
Don't listen to me. I'm in front of no.
He lives in a dinosaur park.
I just like, get me out of here, guys. Honesty sent a helicopter and a blood vial. So the other thing I was gonna say, the last thing I kind of will mention, because this is getting a little in the weeds. I think the pros and cons ultimately is the studio treats you differently. And some of those have pros and cons, right? The con ultimately is you're not an employee, your company is hired. So some of those employee benefits that you may have may not be entitled to you.
Yes, also we should mention that the 401k that was just talked about, if you are on a loan out, you cannot participate in the 401k. Correct. So you better save money your own way and enter into your own 401k. If you're at Disney, you can't get a silver pass. Not that you could use it right now anyways, but if you're at DreamWorks and they give bonuses, you don't get a bonus because you're not an employee. You're like a contractor, part of the business. So some of the benefits you don't get, which is another con.
I will say that if people are worried about the Disneyland, I've heard people be like, I've saved enough doing a loan out that I can afford to get an annual pass that doesn't have as much blackout dates. Just to,
and that's like the biggest flex of any Disney employee. Right there.
truly.
I thought I might get a Disney job, and my husband and I had a very serious conversation where it's like, I don't know if I can do the loan out. I need that silver pass. And yeah, we had a little bit of a disagreement about how reasonable it was to not save $15,000 in taxes because of a Disney pass. So,
then,
I mean, the pro is that you save a lot of money if you make a certain amount of money, but it's just a lot of extra work is the con.
Jacob,
and the
sorry.
other too is that you could go back and forth. So like, you don't feel like you have to be completely tied. If your financial circumstances change, if you take a different job, it's like, oh, I don't want to have to do that. You don't have to do it. I mean, you're on the hook to kind of keep your LLC alive for $800. But if you take a job and you get paid differently, it's fine. You can figure it out with your accountant. That's an easy thing as well. So it just basically, it just comes down to how much math you like to do. How many times you want to pull out your calculator and just type in math and stuff. So
yeah, you can always switch. Like I've had certain gigs where I was just like, I don't want to bother being paid for my loan. I just want that money to come to me. I know I'm going to pay more taxes, but that's okay. You know, if you were going to have a job, but only for 2 months or something, maybe you wouldn't do the loan out for that because you just want to get that money. You know, if you were hired as a story editor or you're hired on a show that's going to get 2 or 3 seasons and you know that you're going to be safe and make a steady amount of income, I think in that instance, a loan out is very attractive and you should definitely consider it. Like I definitely hear friends that are like, I got an offer for this preschool show that runs for 3 years. Like, do it, get a loan out, like save some money, you know?
I will say, if we just want to show the first steps to take, there's a document that we have that just shows,
Hold
again,
on, it's animated.
come up
What?
slowly but surely, but Ben was talking about there's we will also share this as a PDF for those who want to really look at it and sit and think about it. But there's a website you would go and check different business names. They usually want you to send a couple because there might not be a business name that's available. Then you wind up using an accountant. You just send them a bunch of the information. Some of the main things, again, that they had mentioned is paying, you know, $800 each year. But, you know, number 5, of course, in all caps, importantly, you will no longer have taxes taken out of your paychecks. And then where there was talking about if you wanted to do it yourself or you have someone do payroll, it usually they ask to do 35 or 40% that you save and hold out. And then lastly, last animated little slide here.
There it is.
You wind up paying end of year with some of the money, and then you know, moving forward, you have a tax ID if you want to put that on for your jobs. And again, like Ben was saying, it's not like you incorporate and that's the end of it. You have to do it. You can do both. So yeah,
Amazing.
them's the pieces of the loan out.
Honestly,
Any
another
final-
shout out for all this stuff in this panel. Honestly, with
the
Colleen.
movement within the keynote. I know we
I know,
tried to make it
seriously.
exciting.
Look at this text.
Any final
Yes.
like golden nuggets before we move on to our final slide?
I would just say, at least when I was also, I had asked other friends who had incorporated, and I was thinking of it like, you're saving more money, right? So how much more weekly were you saving? And they were like, it's not exactly a weekly thing. It's more of a bigger chunk of your money that you, you know, if you're making 100K, you get the deductions to get you down into a lower bracket. So you're maybe taxed at like 60K, and then you wind up saving more money. So it can sound complicated, but it's basically not a weekly rate that changes. It's a lump sum that you wind up getting.
Yeah, and just in case anyone else is interested, another big question I had is like, can you still file for unemployment? And the answer is yes, you can. You have to pay yourself a certain amount of living wage every week so that when it comes time to file for unemployment, that you can collect unemployment, but you can collect unemployment from yourself, which is very weird.
It is, and that's what's so weird about it, because you're like writing your own checks, you're like doing all this stuff, you're like full-time bossing your own money, and then at some point you're like, I'm unemployed, who's going to pay me unemployment? I am. Weird. It's weird.
You know,
Do you have to set up your own HR department that's also yourself?
You know what, they have like certain like you have to have meetings and you have to have minutes and you have all this like BS you have to do. I've lied on so many of those forms. Oh, we did talk about one other thing. The other little nugget is there is a possibility too to write off a lot of stuff for your home and your home office when you incorporate. That's another thing to also look at. So
Because everybody is working from home. So even if your home office is the left side of the kitchen, because you're in an apartment with 4 other people, that's your home office. And write that off. You're paying for your internet, your overhead, all of your electricity, your phone, all of that's the business now. So expense it. All right. So we have come to the quintessential moment of the final slide. But
Boom. Look at
there
that.
it is.
Look at that.
Wait for it. And thank you, our special guests, Dani, Ben, and
Yay.
Jacob. Woo! Thank you for making finances fun. Colleen and I just want to remind you that all of this is about just asking questions and like chatting with your fellow writers. And honestly, if you're on a job, you're a line producer, make friends with production, find out, start asking the questions, because truly every time I've had a question, I just start asking, and you will find your way to the solve and hopefully to money. So all right, with that, we are going to allow a little bit of time for Q&A, and please read in the fine type. But also, anything that we don't have an answer to, we'll try to figure out. I think Patrick's going to help us a little bit with some conversation topics. Just if there's anything in the Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
It looks like we just have a couple of questions in Q&A. I'll just go through them. If anybody has anything, we can answer. The first is, what do you do if your attorney isn't invoicing properly? Like you don't notice yourself because you're relying on them. So I think this one's just sort of, being clear of what you want with your attorney. It's, making sure you're on the same page there. I wish I had kind of a golden answer for this one, but I think it's really just proper communication, letting them know what's going on and what the expectations are.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that the golden rule, which is like you are your own best advocate always. I absolutely love my reps, but I've had to follow up on some paychecks that hadn't come in yet, simply because I'm monitoring my bank account and they aren't. They are monitoring many writers' bank accounts and chasing down checks and stuff. I would say the point, from at least if I were in your position, the point at which I would seek someone else, or you should just start going directly with the company and maybe lose this person, is if you've asked them to advocate for you, or you have sent them after a specific check and they have not delivered. So if they're not actively, like when you say this is what I need you to do, if they're not doing that, then, and also knowing what their job is, because a lawyer chasing down checks for you is a little bit different than a manager doing it. That's not depending on what you used your lawyer for, what their job is, that might not be in their purview. I don't know, anybody else?
No, I mean, I just know that in general, sometimes I'm aware of when I've done like freelance stuff that can take a while to come in. And I'll have to nudge my reps sometimes to be like, hey, that job was like a while ago and I still haven't gotten that. Like, what's up with that? So I know that I've had to definitely like nudge to make sure that it happens. And then even following up on like, hey, you said you'd send it. I still don't have the check.
Yep.
Next question. Should you get a loan out if you make 150K in 1 year, but you're thinking you won't make that much yearly? Should you only form one if you think you'll consistently make that much? Let's start with that question. There's another part to it, but I'm curious about what others think about this. That's a tricky one. It's trying to figure out what your base level will be beyond just a single year and a single job.
As one who has done this and has also made less than this and been on both sides of this with the loan out, I would say it's still financially beneficial for you to have a loan out. It just doesn't become as much of a savings until that kind of magic number. I don't think it really becomes worth the task of having a loan out until you kind of get towards that 125, 150,000 a year. But it still has some, some value, even if you're not making that much, then you could still save some. It just ends up being kind of a wash, just not as much worth your time. Ben and I are actually starting a podcast about animation loan outs. It's going to be great.
Does Ben know?
Yeah.
Ben just texted Ben. I said, we should start a podcast about animation loanouts. And I think he left the chat. It's a one-person chat now. He's just me. He said, Ben Siemon has left this conversation. So it's just me. Yeah. So you can subscribe to my podcast about animation.
I think, yeah, like I said a little bit earlier, for me, like personally, like I thought I was gonna have a job for a certain amount of time, and that didn't end up being the case. If I was gonna get paid for writing a season of television and that job was gonna last a year and I was gonna make $150,000 a year, then I would definitely do it. But then after that, if I was gonna take a job and perhaps it was the next year and it was a much shorter job, then I might kind of debate, like, am I gonna use my loan out for this, or am I gonna just be paid as myself? So I think you do have that flexibility. You know, I haven't been as adamant as probably my accountant would want me to be, in that, like, I'm also an actor, but not really. But like, I get residuals and things where I could be paid as a loan out, and I haven't been as dutiful as I could be to like get everything paid into the loan out. Like, I just kind of been like, oh, I want these residuals from Dancing in the Street with James Corden 2 years ago, like, to just be paid to me, you know, like, so I think it is a hard decision. If you're offered for a show that's going to run for 1 or 2 seasons and you know you're going to have that job for a year, then by all means, like, definitely do a loan out. If it's a much shorter job, then you might make a different decision and just decide to be paid by yourself, because, you know, you do have to pay that $800 a year to have that viable business license. But beyond that, like, there doesn't have to be, you know, regular costs that are incurred with being a loan out, unless Jake's going to tell me that I'm wrong.
I'm going to tell you to save it for the podcast, Ben. Don't give it all away now. Make them subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
I did want to get to the last part of this question, though. Do you have to form the loan out before you're making money under a contract?
Yeah.
If you have a certain job, you have to, you can't really switch. So you couldn't like start on, I'm going to make up a show, Jib Jab. You couldn't start on Jib Jab and then be 3 months into Jib Jab and then be like, now I'm going to be a loan out. Like,
However, I do know of a writer, when I was on DuckTales, we were contracted for 3 seasons. They had more experience, so they were contracted for 2. And when we got our 3rd season, he waited in between season 2 and 3, and he incorporated for season 3. Disney was annoyed and about it, but they did it. So
yes, between seasons, it seems like it could be possible, but like in the season, once it started, like I personally like had a big race to the finish to try to get my loan out filed just in time for when my job started. It was cutting it very close, and they were like, if you get paid as a person before you're a loan out, like, then you're going to be paid as a person the whole season. So yeah, you can't switch between seasons. I mean, between the season itself, but you might be able to switch between seasons if you are the really cool person that Colleen is talking about.
it's Bob. It's Bob. Okay.
Next up, it looks like, Jacob, are you typing out the loan out question that Bethany has?
You know, I started to, and then I realized I'm typing on an iPad. Nobody likes typing on an iPad, so but I can't answer the question.
Okay.
I'll say it out loud so everyone on the recording knows. How did you do the initial estimate of how much you'd save by doing a loan out?
Okay. Oh, how much I thought, see, I'm glad you read this question out loud, because I read this wrong. I thought she was wondering how much should you save in preparation for like taxes for a loan out. You know, I think for me, I already had a loan out with my writing partner, so it was more just out of necessity. But maybe someone else, maybe one of the Colleens could speak to how much money you factored this.
I think honestly, like the ballpark is, it's like we were throwing around that 15K, because that's, you know, out of 150, that might be kind of your number. It depends on how much at tax time you put against how much the company has made. So that is why, really, like, if you work the year or 2, like, let's say you have a consistent job, you work the year, you know how much you made without the loan out, and then you also know how much you got dinged in taxes as a W-2, then you can go like, well, that's my mark. If I am not paying that much next year, then I've saved. But it is a little bit of the writing, the gain, and then also like you as an individual and what you're writing off. But yeah, it can be, I would say, like, you're probably going to, if you're making over 100, you're probably going to save $8,000 or more.
Okay, and we're going to try to get to Shane's questions. This will be the last one of the night. She has some specifics about, yeah.
Now, I also caught one, and it's a short one. I also caught one in the chat that was just about when we were talking about weeklies. The question was, what does one do on a weekly basis? If they hire you for a week and you write a script that week, do you get a weekly plus script or just weekly? It's a little, I'm not totally sure, but I can tell you. So a staff writer who's paid a weekly rate, you are paid the weekly rate through what your contract is. So you might be contracted on a season 1 for 20 weeks, 30 weeks, 40 weeks, whatever. Every week you're going to get that rate. And then you are, therefore, the show, you are at will of what we need you to do in the writer's room. So you might be in the room breaking script, you might be in the room breaking outlines, or we might, yes, you might be on script. So that week you might be off writing your outline or your script. If you are the story editor, your weekly is you're running the room, or you are running the scripts and you are looking at, your schedule, you're bringing in freelancers if you need to, you're doing more of the high level. And then if you are writing on top of that, your weekly rate would, if you've contracted scripts on top, your weekly rate doesn't cover the scripts you're writing on top of your weekly job, running the room, organizing the writers, bringing in the scripts, and then doing all the stuff as production gets started that you might be responsible for. So I hope that solves that question, but I just wanted to grab it out of the chat.
All right, so Shane's, this will be the last one for the night. So Ben suggests that you can't deduct payments to reps and other things from taxes anymore. Does that apply only to W-2 employees or also to freelancers who are under the 1099 miscellaneous? I think I remember reading it only affects W-2 employees, but I'm not an accountant either. So I think this one's just in regards to like the deductions you can make. Obviously you can deduct if you're under a loan out. There's a lot of different ways that you can itemize your deductions. I think that works for W-2 employees as well. There are certain things that you can deduct there, but has anybody been in that situation where they're freelancing under a 1099 contract?
Yes. As of last year, you were able to put it against. I don't know if the new tax law Ben was referencing was for this upcoming tax year. But yes. And then I saw the second part of the question is, would it not make as much of a benefit if you are able to put stuff against your 1099s? And that totally depends on how much you're making on those 1099s. So if you're making a bunch of, by the way, everybody who doesn't know, a 1099 is when you're not taxed. And so you're getting the full chunk of cash at tax time. And then you try to make it look like you made less. You put your expenses against it so that you're taxed at a lower rate. I was able to put a bunch of stuff against my 1099s, but I didn't, my W-2s were way, way more than my 1099s. So it wasn't that, it wouldn't be as beneficial if I was under a full S Corp and both the W-2 money and 1099 money was all the money that I could be putting stuff against.
Great. Well, that is going to be it. I want to personally thank Colleen, and everyone else, Ben, Jacob, and Dani, for being our guests tonight. Thank you all the attendees that came and asked questions. This panel will be available. The recording of it will be available afterwards. So if you have anyone you want to send it to, just in terms of new writers that are getting in and are hearing some of these terms for the first time, feel free to send that out. But thanks again, Colleens. We really appreciate your effort. I hope this saves a lot of new writers a lot of coffees that they'd have to have with experienced writers where they get this information piecemeal. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Yay! Go get your money.
Get the money.
Bye.